We are here. But if you are just joining us for the first time or returning for a visit, please welcome again, number 10, I think. So it's 10 weeks of the Oak Barrel After Hours podcast. If you are joining us for the first and aren't too familiar with this, this was kind of an idea developed by Scott Fitzsimons, who was sitting next to like that, which was kind of just wanting to give a bit more.
Keep going. God knows what's going on.
Wanting to give a bit more of an insight into our conversations, I guess, here in the store. We are closed right now. Are we live?
I reckon this thing's having real problems.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It says it's been paused.
I think we're going, but the quality is awful. Yeah, no, I think we're going.
Yeah. Okay, we're going.
Just give us.
So that basically sums up the story of how I got arrested, broke out of jail, and came back here on Monday morning to get here to work.
Yeah. And
I hope everyone got that, because I don't feel like saying it again.
And my story was way too raunchy to say, even off air.
Yeah. Can't believe you had a spare shirt. Wow.
I think we might be live.
It says, viewing.
Okay. No, Scott, don't touch anything. Just going to leave this. I can see whiskey in glasses.
Beautiful.
Now, Joe, I know that you've spoken for about 7 minutes. Do you want to just do that again, just very quickly, in about 10 seconds?
I do.
Thank you,
this is
Gary.
when Scott and I sit down after work and we shut the store and we sit down here and we talk. And we did that for a little while, for about 2 years now. And we decided we recorded about 10 or 11 weeks ago. 11 weeks, and this is episode 10.
10 seconds, beautiful. we do apologise for that little malfunction. It's one of those things, everything was going good until about a minute till we went live, and I realised something was quite wrong, and then I fixed that, and then it all sort of fell apart. But that is why we talk about booze for a living and do not do things like to Gary. To be honest, I don't know where we were.
The true believers, yeah.
I would say it was a nice trip wherever we just spent the last 10 minutes, but I honestly have no idea. So, Joey, we've got some wine and some whiskey here tonight. I'm going to talk about the whiskey in a second once I just shore this up very quickly.
Yeah, so the format is, if it is your first time joining us, I generally pick a wine or generally just something of interest, that's sort of caught our eye in the week or the weeks leading up to this. And Scott does the same with something distilled. Often he will bastardize the grape industry by distilling it and putting it in a glass. And we will go back and forth and sort of, throw ideas around, throw opinions around, and just get that second opinion, get that kind of, off the beaten track notion that we would probably often miss tasting on our own, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's what it's all about. Drinks and whiskey, wine, beers, ciders, soju, sakes, whatever we talk about. These are social drinks, the ones we sell here at the Oak Barrel. So it's no use trying stuff that by yourself, because you never know how it's going to go around people. So this is a new record. It's now 18 past 9. So this is a trying to reconnect. What are we on? We're back. I'm sorry. This is, I don't know what's going on here, but this is just not like anything.
It's sort of half a foot forward from where we were.
To the point where it's plugged in charging and maybe the volume's going down. This is cooked. I don't know if anyone can hear me at this point, but I think Crafty, in all your whiskies, I know all your whiskies have names for various reasons, and I think Rage has never been more apt than right now for me with one of your whiskies. What's your thing called?
My what?
Is that what you...
Oh, my hotspot?
Yeah, do you want to... Are you going to have enough power though?
I can plug it in. Yeah, it should just be Joe's iPhone.
Come on, baby. Show me some love.
Is that slow?
So, yeah, we're running at a very low. I can see there's 20 people watching at the
Yeah.
moment, and I do apologise because
Your
I
connection.
can't see a thing. All
Yeah.
right, let's just keep talking.
I think we're going.
Let's just keep talking.
Yeah.
So, anyway, brand new release for us here at the Oak Barrel arrived in store yesterday. I got it up here today. This is the brand new release from Crafty, from Craftworks.
Yeah, right.
So I did have a big flowery introduction that I was going to do for this one, but I'm going to sort of skip ahead because we're running well behind time. So I think in the Whiskey Fair program for this year, I wrote a little blurb about each distillery or distiller that was coming into town, and I think I wrote for Crafty that he was the most enthusiastic distiller in Australia. He's a long-time friend of the Oak Barrel, has been coming to the Oak Barrel tasting for many, many years. Sort of spoke about starting a distillery. And when you run as many whiskey tastings as I, many booze tastings from all around the spirits worlds as I do, you do get a lot of people who are talking. Andrew Harding says blind tasting. Is it maybe that's because you can hear us and can't see us?
Maybe. Yeah.
You do get a lot of people come up, inspired after a whiskey tasting, and probably more importantly, inspired after having 6 or 7 whiskeys, going, I'm going to start a distillery. And you sort of go, yeah, mate, that's a really good idea. And then they wake up and they think that's a really bad idea and they can move on to something else. But to Crafty's credit, he kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And we're now here at the end of 2019, only a few weeks away from 2020. And not does Crafty not only have a distillery, he's got a bunch of barrels laid down of his whiskey that's been distilling over the past year and a bit, almost a year and a half now, I think, 18 months, as well as stuff under his Craftworker independent bottling line, which he has sourced from a number of distilleries around Australia. Now, excuse me, this is a release called Rage, and I'm going to tell you as much as I can about this whiskey because it's written on the back here. Take that tag off so you get to see the front label a little bit. But written on the back here, the creative is by Crafty, so Craig Crafty Fields, who has put this whiskey together, done all the labels and that sort of thing. Also, I think the creative refers to the idea behind the whiskey as well. The spirit comes from a New South Wales distillery. That's all that we know. For this one, I can't disclose the distillery because I don't know, because all it is a New South Wales distillery. It's gone into a French oak barrel that previously held Pinot Noir. It was cast on May 2017, bottled last month, November 2019. 220 bottles in the world. We're drinking bottle number 110 at the moment, so smack down the middle, at 59.8% ABV. So, again, this is one of those whiskies in the sort of Australian whiskey sort of element, these independent bottlings. The label tells you as much as it can, but, this is coming from New South Wales Distilling, and we don't know which one that is. Now, there has been a lot of bottlings by independent bottlers in Australia from New South Wales and from elsewhere that have, released bottlings from a New South Wales distillery. And there's a bit of a joke going around. Tim Duckett and the Tasmanian Independent Bottlers sort of kicked it off by labelling some of his whiskies as a renowned New South Wales distillery. And a lot of people have a lot of guesses of what that is. I have a hunch that this is a different New South Wales distillery.
Yeah, right, okay.
This is not the one that people automatically assume
would think
when they see this. But the proof is in the pudding. This has just literally landed in store. Crafty was very kind enough to give us a little sample of that one there. And my table toss tastes very good there. And so we're going to sample this.
So this is the first time you've seen this whiskey?
I nosed it a little bit earlier today.
Right.
But I haven't actually tried it.
You didn't see it in progress from Crafty at any point?
I'm honestly not too sure. I don't think so. I think I maybe tried a little sample of this, but I don't really remember. This was part of a series of about 5 casks that Crafty laid down at around the same time in 2017. There's Tokay, and I think there's a bourbon cask and a few other things. But this is the first, all 100 litres, this is the first release out of those 5 to come to fruition, to be bottled. Right, okay. We have a stinking hot summer going on all around us at the moment, so I imagine by the time we get in about 2 or 3 months, some of the others will be ready.
Yeah.
They're the same size. Coming from Taz, particularly this cask come from Taz Cooperage Company. Gary says, "Is it guess the distillery?" You can have a go. I mean, we did get a guess the wine, grape, and vintage a couple of weeks ago. Based on
but do we know the answer to that question?
No.
Yeah. Okay.
No, we don't know. We don't know.
Yeah.
But onto the whiskey, because this is what we're here for. This is a big nose.
Yeah.
Straight away. Like you mentioned while we were down plugging cords in and pulling them back out again, that after pouring this, you could smell this straight away.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
bottle open. It was almost Lefroy guess the way that the whole room sort of opened up straight off the bat. Now, probably good point too. This has been matured for the most of its life out at Capity, which is just a couple of hours behind us to the west there. Over the Blue Mountains, past Lisco. Instead of going on to Bathurst, you go north, as if you were going to Dunedoo and Mudgee. And Capity is a very, very small town in that area. And it's probably a good time to note as well that if you live in Sydney, you will know that it's been quite smoky here today. And there's been a lot of media coverage about the bushfires and their impact on Sydney. But it's been far less severe in Sydney than it has been actually near the bushfires. And where Capity is actually has one in front of it at the moment and one at the back. Gospers Mountain is quite a big one that has been going for a couple of weeks now, I think, but it's relatively under control, but it's, burnt half a mountain off. But there's a new one that's just opened at Palmer's Oakey, which is only about 10 k's out the back, which is just a little bit out of control, which is unnerving enough. So hopefully everyone who's out there fighting the fires and living out there is staying safe. But the point of saying that, on top of that, is that Capity is that sort of dry sort of area in central west New South Wales. And so hotel and been very, very thankful that there's been an open fire in the thing. It's been bloody cold a few years ago. But yes, it does get very, very warm. G'day to Will, g'day to Craig, g'day to Cy, Lee, Daniel, everyone has been tuning in, and I do apologise about the quality issues we're having just at the moment, but hopefully you can roughly see us and hear us what's going on. But that's why I say out of this selection of 5 casks that were laid down a couple of years ago, I think we'll see a lot of them ready. But this is the first bat off the rank. I think with Crafty's previous releases, we've had Just Derek, we've had the Lager Cats, and the Black Soul Beast. They've been really, really intense whiskies, almost to the point where the spirit's been hidden by big port and sherry and fortified casks and that sort of thing. This is a little bit different. There's a lot of sweetness, a lot of berry sweetness on the nose here. That classic red wine thing. Pinot Noir casks haven't been traditionally used a lot. We see a lot in the Australian market now. But Springbank, with their Longrow releases, did a few Longrow red Pinot Noirs and sort of, I think, changed a few people's mind about what Pinot Noir casks could do to whiskey, particularly Scotch whiskey a few years ago. I mean, I haven't tasted this yet, but the nose is big.
I think it's opening up really well for me, though.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that's just palate adjustment or something like that, but, came out massive. But it's actually really getting quite elegant now.
Yeah, do you know what I'm finding a little bit of that is after that big berry nose of that first open the bottle, blow the table away, is almost like a real like a wood polish sort of aroma without like the acetone nature of it. Yeah. Just a very elegant sort of thing, and it's just underneath, but it's very. I would say this is perhaps the less crazy of the crafty independent bottling noses so far, but it's the most balanced, certainly the most elegant. I think people have described it as aromatic. Definitely I would put that in there.
Yeah, for me, I'm getting a lot of that really baked rhubarb pie thing that comes through. That's just attributing to that red fruit sweetness from the barrel, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Still real spicy too, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just fun. A lot of nutmeg, a lot of cardamom.
Yeah.
A lot of that exotic kind of
very
nose
exotic.
there.
Yeah. taking my very first sip then, I'm very, very pleased to report, and I don't always get to say this when I talk about Australian whiskies, is spirit character. Something that's really important. We were talking about on the back label there, you've got where the various bits of this release have come together in terms of the distillery and the cask and that sort of thing. But the creative, and you can assume the creative by Crafty is just the labeling and the design and the bottle shape and that sort of thing. But I think also matching spirit to a cask.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where this comes from, but this is a big spirit. This has got a bit of guts to it.
Yeah.
It's quite muscular on the back palate there.
It is. It hangs around.
Yeah. Definitely like the nose for this, I didn't say it, but I was sort of thinking, okay, this is quite an elegant, polished, in more ways than one's polished nose. I wonder whether this is going to be super front forward.
Yeah.
But whoever's distilling this spirit, I don't know what they're doing in their spare time. I got a few guesses who it might be. There's an obvious one that plays with a lot of sherry cask that I don't think it is from there. It's not as spicy, but it's just a really muscular spirit. There's a few guesses going around the Facebook Live chat there. I'm not going to speculate on where it's from because I almost certainly get it wrong. And the whole point of whoever Crafty purchased this spirit off was the whole point of not. Please don't say what it is. So we won't speculate on that. Part of the reason why we were rushing a little bit towards the end then is I was actually trying to get the whiskey up online. We got 6 bottles dropped off yesterday, and we've actually just sold one straight away. So it has shown up online. So that's a good sign. It's a shipping order as well. I'll probably try and pack it tonight, but I'll get it shipped tomorrow. I'm not going to do it right now. But yeah, this is a really interesting whiskey. Going even back to the second nose, I think that's almost the most mean when it comes to whiskey. Is I've had a few drinks tonight to various samples and that sort of thing, and had a drink a bit of gin this afternoon for new things that were coming. And once I got off that nose and that weight to that spirit, going back to the nose, I'm picking up some very, very different notes.
Yeah.
Probably much more savoury notes.
I'm getting that really lovely, like juby, almost like that licorice character that comes through.
Yeah.
But yeah, that exotic spice just seems to chase you down the nose. I think like it just being obviously not a whiskey nut or anything like that, but I like the notion of the term rage in this wine, because I think it comes out very, very, very strong. There's actually for me, it's actually quite a well put together, really well constructed, really almost a pretty style of whiskey, backed by that big muscularity push that doesn't dominate.
Yes.
It's really interesting.
Yeah.
And the cask doesn't dominate, like you said, as well either.
And I think that's the risk, and I should pay kudos to Crafty on this one for pulling it out when he did. I reckon another summer, and as I've said before on this live stream, I don't think we should be talking too much about ages in Australian whiskey. Summers are far more important in terms of aging. 3 or 4 years can mean two very different things. 3 or 5 summers are completely different things. So very smart for pulling this out when he did. Spent most of its life. It didn't spend its whole life in capacity. The distillery wasn't fully built. The bond wasn't fully built when it was first cast, and things take time to move around and get shipped. But yes, to give maybe another little hint, which is not going to be a very big hint as to where this might come from, we're using Voyager malt in this with malting specifications. But seeing as Voyager supply a few people, hopefully that doesn't whittle it down too much. But yeah, there's a lot of speculation going around on the Facebook live chat. So, in terms of commercial aspects for this, as I did say, we've just put it online about 10 minutes before we came online here. There's 220 in the mark, and actually it's saying out of stock here, but I'm pretty sure we have some more somewhere. we're selling it for $199, so it
Mhm.
works out, $180 essentially for price alcohol. Right now, where we're talking about, we're having a lot of conversations about pricing of Australian whiskey and corrections and that sort of thing. Coming from a wine background, I've got my own thoughts on this, and you can throw it back at me in a second. But coming from a wine background, who, when you're working at restaurants around Europe and that sort of thing, you came back about 4 years ago, 3 years ago now?
Yeah, probably about just under 3 years.
3 years ago. So you sort of missed in those years you were away when no one wanted a bar of Australian whiskey, flying straight into everyone wants Australian whiskey.
Yeah.
How do you see Australian whiskey pricing, not from an industry, take what I think out of it and what we speak about, from a pure consumer's point of view? How do you see 60% whiskey at $200? What does that mean to you?
I mean, because I think that, just from a general, punter's perspective, that's maybe just getting into whiskey, maybe isn't used to Australian whiskey, maybe isn't from Australia, maybe hasn't seen how it's progressed or anything like that. But I think that, from what you see, there's still that you still have nearly every day that discussion of age statement, like nearly day in, day out, because of what people have grown up on in the Scottish stuff. And like you mentioned earlier, that that we should. That looks a lot better.
Well, I can see us now. I mean, everyone else has fallen off, but at least we're sort of here.
Optus mobile.
Yeah, I think
We're here.
this is actually broken BlackBerry mobile has been the issue tonight.
Yeah. Android user or BlackBerry or not iPhone.
Definitely the iPhone doesn't work. The BlackBerry's worked well every other time, but it's just everything is not working for us. Anyway, so
we're good. Let's start talking.
Nick, thank you for
G'day, Nick. How are you? The one we poured soon.
Yeah. Final thoughts on this one. I don't know how much you heard of this previously.
Well, actually, you were just mentioning across the crafty releases, what's kind of what you thought in comparison to Black Soul Beast, Mugger Cat, and all the rest, which I don't think we caught. But
yeah, I think we might have gone off there. So this is and it's always going to be the way with an independent bottler, particularly with the way that Crafty's done it, sourcing barrels specifically from different places and sourcing spirits specifically from very different places. You're looking for different flavor profiles, and reiterate the word creative there in terms of who's done the creative for this whiskey. Crafty, it's not just a label design and a bottle shape; it is actually matching these things together, matching flavors as well. So I think that's very important to remember. The Just Derek was excellent, and it was ballsy and it was big. The Lager Cat, I think, was probably the most interesting so far. Black Soul Beast, which was the award winner, it won international medals around in Scotland and that sort of thing. It was the one that was the most in demand by people, in terms of domestic local production and market. I think that the Rage, which is a feeling that I'm feeling right now, is probably the best put together whiskey.
Yep.
And reiterating what I think I said a little bit earlier, this was pulled out at quite a good time, particularly with the weather that's going on at the moment. Really, really smart whiskey. The nose is just so it's alluring. It's weird to call a whiskey intoxicating because you drink enough of any of them and they're all up.
But even the time we've had this in our glass, it's changed.
It's really, really attractive.
Like massively.
Really attractive.
Yeah, that's still that lovely spice. It's not that that sweet licorice note, that kind of almost like baked bread, apricot, honey. Yeah, really,
and that,
really delicious.
Going back after the olfactory glands have sort of kicked into gear, is more of that less of that wood polish and more of that sort of stewed bready fruits
Yeah,
underneath.
yeah. That's really good. And like, yeah, and I suppose it really translates to the palate, but that you get, I think you get the power on the palate that the nose sort of alludes to.
Yeah.
You know, that sort of enticement, and then you get it, and it really kind of, really shows up.
Thank you for everyone who's jumped back on for take 3 of what is meant to be a one-shot show. And Cassandra, who is come on board as our social media marketing help here, and said, welcome back. And we were very, very sorry, Cassandra. We hope you can help us to clean this
up. If you know anything about internet speeds,
we've stuffed this up. I know you got some ideas for videos, and we've totally ruined this for you. But it's online now, and through us, but also through Crafty's website. I'm sure there's a few other retailers that we get a few bottles as well. $180 for members, 220 bottles. So this will not hang around, particularly this time of year. But yeah, very, very impressed with this. And I think like super Moorish. I think, it doesn't feel right to always put this right up against his other releases so far. If when we get to the actual stuff that is, about 18 months old now, that Crafty is distilled and will come under the Craftworks distillery label rather than the independent bottlers label, we can put them up one against another and talk about them and how they relate to each other. But yeah, just the sweetness, the hook of that sweetness on the nose here is, and the softness of the nose after a bit of time. Yeah. I mean, to be fair, we've left this open now for 50 minutes. We'd only intended to leave it open for half an hour, so we've given it a bit of a more extended time than we expected. But very tasty.
This is looking cracking. Is Crafty still here? Sure he is.
Probably not. I don't think he's out in Cappadician. I think he's actually back in Sydney. But just to reiterate, again, I think they're about 10 k's from the distillery at the moment. So hopefully they stay at least 10 k's away, and hopefully go out as soon as possible. And to anyone who's out there fighting things, our glasses raised to you for. We can deal with a little bit of smoke here in Sydney. You guys are doing it much harder than we are at the moment.
Absolutely, but no, this is cracking.
Yeah,
like I said, it's definitely one of his more impressive. Really well put together.
Yeah, and it shows for me. I'm going to sound like a broken record. A maturity in palate of knowing when to pull this out. As I said, this was a batch of 5 casks that were laid down, all 100 litres at the same time in May 2017. The other 4 we haven't seen yet. This is the first of that batch. I'm sure there's probably hesitation to release them all pretty soon after one another, or do them in a set or alongside. For better or worse, to pull this one out now, I think is very, very smart. The maturity of palate. Yes, is what I put it down to. Which is what you always look
for something like this. I mean, I'm not too familiar with where a lot of Crafty's bottles go. Like these sorts of bottles would sit in a bar, right? It's sort of one of those whiskeys there. People would hunt it down and go and ask for it to be served by the nip in a well-known whiskey bar. And the Capity pub.
Yeah, the Capity pub. I think so. Yeah, I think so. Particularly this new release. And normally we would say, "G'day, as soon as we finish the live tasting, come on down and try a little bit." But we can't do that tonight because we have drunk it all in the some rage and frustration of our own tonight with various things. G'day Craig and g'day Denise. Thanks for joining us, by the way. But I think like the release of this is so small, and 220 bottles sounds just like a small amount, and it is a tiny amount. So you're not going to find these in many bars outside of necessarily Sydney at the moment, and Greater Sydney and the Inner West and that sort of thing. So maybe some of the real top whiskey bars down in Melbourne might find a couple. You either buy it through Crafty, or someone like myself, a retailer, a bar, you go and talk to Crafty and dig it out. So it's quite a hard job to go out and get on the road and sell this to people. He's got to take care of his family and be out distilling in the country and do all that sort of thing. So when the releases get bigger, I think you find a little bit more spread of things. So the people who want to find it will go and find it. And certainly Crafty as an individual, as a personality in the scene, and the Craftworks whiskies that are coming up, there's a lot of talk about them, a lot of hype. But we have to remember that is a lot of quite insular, whiskey talk.
Mhm.
I can say from pure, anecdotal evidence that people coming in to the store, looking at the Australian whiskey shelf and going, "Oh, you got crafty stuff," are people who are quite active in the whiskey scene.
Yeah.
They're people who may not work, let alone part time at all, but it's their hobby, and so they sit there and they'll Google and find out what the conversations are happening about in the Australian whiskey industry and talk to people and make friends on the internet and go to whiskey tastings, and so you learn that way. The average whiskey drinker who maybe buys a bottle a month, who doesn't do much research, relies on the bartender or the retail assistant or whoever it is for their whiskey. I think that's a market that doesn't know about craft whiskey yet. So,
and when you're only making
210
odd bottles,
what's the point?
Yeah.
So I think yes, but it's still the very tip of the iceberg.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking about a release every 2 or 3 months at the moment.
Yeah.
With the Craftworks label on it. When Craftworks Capiti distilled juice comes online, and I don't know whether it's going to be next year, whether in time and maturation will tell us. It might be later on. When that happens, I think you'll see a bigger push, and not just from Crafty himself, but from the outside wider drinking public coming. Okay, what is this stuff? Because this takes explaining at the moment.
Yeah.
So that'll come through.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's looking great though.
Yeah, it's like I was a little bit nervous about doing this blind.
Yeah.
Because Crafty's a good friend, and I didn't want to come here and lie. But this is my sort of whiskey. This is super moorish, and everything I feared about it being quite front forward, it's not.
And I think going back on the sorts of things that we've done, something that you do bring up quite regularly is you need to be able to see the spirit in a lot of whiskey, and I think this does exactly that.
Yeah.
While still paying homage to the cask that it's in.
Yeah. I can't pick what this is off the nose in terms of it doesn't show a lot of spirit character, but on the palate, second in the back of the palate, there's a real muscular oomph weight to it, which helps the finish, which is, again, talking about finish is a whole nother conversation. Finishes in Australian whiskey is a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, that looks awesome.
Well, if for no other reason apart from the fact I've run out of whiskey, should we maybe talk about a wine?
Yeah, I think so. I'm going to jump into a bit of red wine.
By the way, Crafty, I don't know if you're still there, if you got bored with us falling in and out of traction, thank you very much for the sample. I had no idea what we were going to pour tonight, and then I walked in and saw this sample sitting on my desk and thought, that is what we're going to pour tonight. Yeah. Made the decision very, very easy.
So yeah, from a red wine finished whiskey now into a red wine of its own. Sort of wanted to go back to the roots a little bit with the red tonight. We sort of did Klaus Pressinger's red blend last week. We've done a few really interesting and really exciting wines that have either just passed my desk or just hit the shelves, and that I've been really super stoked about. And I was sort of just having a bit of a think this afternoon about, what might be cool to talk about, what might be really cool to drink, and then it sort of just struck me in a way where I thought, well, what would I like to just drink? And I feel like it's with a lot of the wines come through, you get really swamped, and everything's kind of new, everything's exciting, and often you maybe miss the wines of the wines that sort of brought you into it, or you reminded you of the surface, I guess, of the wine journeys. So yeah, I guess for those of you that probably haven't maybe been to a tasting or anything like that I've run, I did sort of start off in Europe studying wine, and that wine was often either Burgundy or Bordeaux, much cheaper over there than it is here, and then obviously throughout Italy and Spain as well. And it's a style of wine that is definitely made here in Australia as well, in terms of the big red blends or the elegant Pinots or Italian varietals as well, which we've spoken of before. But there's also a lot of stuff happening that a lot of modern progressive Australian winemakers that are really making their mark as well, which is what I'm very excited about in my job. That being said, one of the wines that really warms my heart a little bit, and that I have drunk a lot of bottles throughout this year that I'm comfortable taking out to an event, or I'm comfortable taking home on a Tuesday night, is better or worse. I don't
Well,
know.
see, I'm just not sure anymore. It's saying live.
It's
It
also,
might be live.
we've tried every piece of electronic upload,
Yeah.
equipment available.
We're actually plugging USBs in a bottle of wines to see if we get connections right at the moment.
Still going.
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it says two people. I can see you. You can see me.
Beautiful.
It's
Marco.
G'day, my name's Scott Fitzsimons. This is Joe Perry. We started this an hour and 5 minutes ago.
That's
and
true.
We're still trying to get it right.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. We're here.
Marco and Baz are
Marco
there.
and Barry.
That's all that matters. As long as you two are there, mate. And Crafty's
And
back as
Crafty's
well.
back as well.
Guys, I don't know what's going on. Today's actually been quite good. It's been quite a smooth day here at the Oak Barrel. But
Then we decided to start messing with things.
yeah, as soon as technology got involved about 9 o'clock, everything was falling apart. But I'm not sure where we dropped off on the wines, but we've drunk a bit of it in that break.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
maybe just give us a quick overview of what this is.
So what we've got on the red wine side of things here tonight is, so sort of mentioning one of my go-tos, one of my all-time favorites of this year, and one of my favorite wineries based out in Pemberton, southern WA, started by a couple known as Bill and Sandra Pennell. And if that name rings a bell, it might do there. Bill and Sandra were responsible for starting a very small Margaret River winery in 1969 called Mosswood, that we now know today for all of its fame and glory, and has produced some of the most incredible Australian wines ever in this country. Some outstanding Cabernet and some great Pinot Noir as well. And then obviously as things got bigger and bigger, Bill and Sandra decided to sell Mosswood and actually move away from Margaret River and move into Pemberton region. It's a little bit cooler, a little bit more inland, into lots of gravel and loam soils where Bill's basic passion for Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, classic Burgundian varietals, really took the reins, and he is responsible again for bringing in some of the most prestigious Grand Cru Burgundy site cuttings, clones, into Australia and planting them on his site down in Pemberton, where they've got a bit of land now. It's quite important, I think, to explain that ever since starting Mosswood back in the late 60s, Bill and Sandra have only ever done everything by hand. It's always been their grapes. They've always made the wine. They've always done their own marketing and pushed it out there. And that's also been the same for their project down in Pemberton, which is Picardy. So just going off that notion there, obviously Bill's passion for Burgundy has led to him making some of the best Pinot Noir and Chardonnay out of the Picardy site that I've tried in Australia. But what really caught my eye when I tasted these with Bill and Sandra about 12 months ago now, was this little red blend. So this is a Merlot dominant red blend off his site with a little bit of Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, exactly 61% Merlot, 20% Cabernet Sauvignon, and 19% Cabernet Franc. Now, the reason it sort of caught my eye is because that screams to me right bank Bordeaux. That screams Saint-Emilion. That screams like the right bank of the Bordeaux region.
Yeah. No, but I've got another question for you.
Yeah.
You're describing this as, you're using a lot of French words like Burgundian and right bank Bordeaux. I remember, it wasn't that long ago, when I described our wine, it might have been a Pinot Noir from Orange, might have been something that Tommy Ward made it from the Swinging Bridge label, and I said, it's a bit more Burgundian than some of your other wines, other Pinots you get in Australia. And you went, and I hope you get that effect. Burgundian. If it's big, you can't beat it. It comes from Burgundy or it doesn't. What are you, how are you describing this as a little bit French, like right bank Bordeaux, breaking your own rules on this one?
Well, so really, really, really glad you asked that question. Because if you were listening when I explained it, all of these things here led me to think right bank Bordeaux. The juice inside the bottle is completely not, though. And that's what's sort of going on. 'Cause when it's ticking all these boxes, visually and saying, this is where they planted, this has been the region. Obviously, Pinot Noir and Chardonnay being the focus, and then obviously doing my research on Bill as being one of the titans of Pinot Noir production in Australia and wine production in general. I really wanted to kind of wrap my head around if Bill and Sandra do have this passion and this love for Burgundian wine, and do have this passion and love for Pinot Noir and Chardonnay here in Australia, and especially in Margaret River, now in Pemberton, how does that translate to Bordeaux varieties? Because they're quite different in style and need to be made very, very differently. And obviously there's lots of, prestigious awards and talk around Bill's Pinot and Bill's Chardonnay. That's why I was quite intrigued as to how you would treat right bank Bordeaux varietals as a predominantly Chardonnay and Pinot Noir producer. So that caught my eye, and I wasn't too sure how to go. And obviously Merlot is a bit of a bad word here in Australia, or in wine production in general over the last 15 years.
It's not very cool at the moment, is it?
Yeah, thank you, sideways. But it's amazing. It's conversations that you probably have them as well. I have them every day. It's just, I don't drink Merlot. Merlot is an inferior grape, and I think we had this discussion maybe on the first or second one of these about Chilean Pais.
Yes.
And about how that used to just be this really easy to produce, cheap, big bunches, pump it out, do whatever. And I think Merlot kind of got that reputation as well around the sort of early to mid 2000s of just making cheap bulk wine that got either put in a silver sack or in a cheap bottle or something like that. But there is some incredible Merlot sites planted in Australia, and also in California. They're doing some great stuff with Merlot as well. Not to mention some of the most historic and most expensive bottles of the wine that are being produced in Bordeaux that contain, if not mostly Bordeaux, not mostly Merlot, all Merlot.
Do we know the makeup of this?
We do. So it's 61% Merlot, 20% Cabernet Sauvignon, 19% Cabernet Franc.
Okay, so it's Merlot dominant.
It's Merlot dominant.
The size 40 font as opposed to the size 20 font is not.
Yeah,
it's
exactly. It's indicative. But at the same time, I think that it's interesting to look at why, Australian wine consumers, and just see that word and go, no. Just go, no, Merlot, no, don't want it. Where being in the right hands and in the right site and in the right wine producer can make some really, really stunning wine. So upon tasting this about 12 months ago and having many a bottle in the last 12 months, for me, this is just it's the definition of balance, especially for Bordeaux varieties being grown in Pemberton and Western Australia in general. They don't get the heat of Margaret River. I guess they don't get that ripening period that you would probably look for in varieties like this. But the way that Bill and Sandra do manage their vineyard, they actually trellis really low to the floor, and it's on very well draining soil as well. They close plant all of their vines, so the vines kind of need to fight each other almost for nutrients in the vineyard. And then by having the vines quite low to the ground, they actually keep a lot of the heat from the sun during the day, which keeps the vines warmer into the afternoon, into the night, which extends their ripening period, which helps these varieties out a lot. So between that and then the history of what Bill and Sandra have done for the Australian wine industry, that it's safe to say that I think they do know what they're doing. So this is a 2015, and in my opinion, one of my favorite wines in the shop. Just balanced, really the tannins are out of place, but the Merlot for me is playing the really star role in this wine, just adding that lovely luscious fruit without being super flabby or anything like that.
Yeah, is that the current vintage, the 15?
I think they've got 16 now.
Yeah, okay. So they've obviously waited.
But it is being held.
There's a fair bit of winemaking involved before this is released and that sort of thing. Super luscious for me, really, really soft on the fruit. But then I think the back end complexity or the mid palate complexity for me is coming from, and I assume it's coming from the Cab Sav element, that little bit of tobacco box earthiness, and just the hint of it. That just hint of wisp of smoke thing that comes through there, but it doesn't hang around. It's not there on the finish, but it's there on the mid part. It's very, very interesting for me.
Yeah, and I do think that's the Cab Sav, I think, playing its role a little bit. Like I said, I think Merlot is the star in this wine, but left on its own probably goes a little bit down that fruity, juicy path. And I think that Cab Sav is there to add that tobacco box, that smoke, that like sweet spice, that tannin element that isn't going to like absolutely tear your face off, but is going to keep everything in check.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Coming from my point of view, it was quite interesting what you were saying, about 3 live streams ago before we went down a couple of times, about just how hands-on the family is about making these wines. From my point of view, Picardy's always been, just a sign for excellence, particularly in Pinot. You just know it's going to be brilliant. When we talk about, we just come from a whiskey that was all about as hands-on as you can get in a shed in Capity. How common is that for these, like for a brand that it's a little bit bigger than, we've spoken about some very, very small wine productions and some very small wine releases. For Picardy, which is a nationally known brand, it's in a lot of restaurants, a lot of places. How common is it for them still to grow everything, be like the pure grower producer hands? Is that still quite common, or? No, not like Picardy obviously don't have anywhere near the scale that Mosswood would now have, and I think that's really part of the. I think that maybe that conception that you have of Picardy is larger than life of what they're actually doing. Yes, am I overstating their production? And because I know the.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I think it's one of those wines that resonates, and obviously the names of Bill and Sandra carry it forward massively. But I just think that in most of the wines that I try, or all of the wines that I try from Picardy, you do see that almost like you can feel the history of that back to the early 60s when they were thinking about getting into wine, then starting at Mosswood, then struggling for 10 years, then making some of the best wine in the 70s, and then going forward into that, and then it's still there. I mean, their son, Steve, actually has his own brand now down in McLaren Vale's SC Purnell. Yeah. Actually, Steve was responsible for bringing the Jimmy Watson Trophy, the most prestigious wine trophy that you can win in Australia, back to McLaren Vale after a long stint outside of it in 2014.
Just lived in New South Wales for about 6 decades.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, Tommy Ward had tucked away behind his shed somewhere.
Yeah, Stewie Olsen and Tommy Ward just hand busted to each other every weekend.
But yeah, I think the reason for me choosing this bottle tonight was it really just balance, and it's almost like it's a wine you can be really comfortable with, just knowing that the decades and decades of Australian wine history that have gone into it and will continue to go into it, and then one of the most iconic people in Australian wine is it's a pure passion project, and that's why I really want to revisit this Bordeaux blend after knowing just how incredible their Pinot and Chardonnay is, and how much time they spend in Burgundy, and how much effort they put into producing top quality Pinot and Chardonnay, to make such a stunning, really approach. I think it's like $35.
Yeah, right.
Easygoing red blend that you could drink every day of the year and be pretty happy with. Yeah. It's really fun.
I was a little bit nervous when we sort of started tonight, in terms of I think you should go with the whiskey first, because I was like, well, I've only smelt it and it smells pretty big, and it's 59.8. It's going to blow some heads off, but just how soft that was.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know you're saying your average wine drinker probably sees Merlot and doesn't read anything else. I read a lot of Cab Sav and Cab Franc, then I was like, I don't know if that's the right way to do it. But both of these, this whiskey and this wine have been surprisingly soft and luscious. It's Pinot Noir cask, so probably shouldn't be too surprised that there's that line between them. But
I think it's an interesting discussion to have, especially on the wine side of things as well, because it's not like the most modern wine label that we have here in the store. And I think that especially wine consumers, a lot that we see come through, maybe get a little bit caught up on they think there's this big gap between classic Aussie wine and modern Aussie wine. Whereas I think if you look at, and in the whiskey as well, I think that if you look at someone like Bill Purnell, who's been around for however long, seeing, and you can see in this wine, he knows the sort of wine he wants to make, but he also knows the sort of wine that Australian wine drinkers want to drink. Whereas you get a lot of people that come in and think old school Aussie wine is going to be 15.5% Coonawarra Cabernet that you can't touch for 10 years.
Yeah.
But I think it's just the experience of knowing what your climate's giving you, how to put the wine together to be enjoyed either right now tonight, or you could easily tuck this away for 10, 15 years and not worry about it.
How would you think something like this would go in a decade or so? Because like for right now, 4 years old, almost 5 years old now, it's drinking really, really well.
Yeah.
And like this is something that I would say drink now. But like in 5 years, a decade, how do you think this is going to change? I mean, it's so soft, so luscious at the moment.
I think it's interesting to talk about as well, because for me it is 4 years old now, but it's still super primary.
Okay.
Like I'm not getting any secondary characteristics really showing too much at the moment.
And for the kids playing home, secondary you're looking for?
Well, like you did mention tobacco spice earlier,
Yep.
which I think comes in, but I think you're looking at that more sort of rustic leatheriness, a little bit more of that woody smoke,
yep,
as opposed to the fresher smoke. But also when you look at some of the great wines of Bordeaux, the great red wines, especially on the left bank, you'll see additions of like 1 or 2% Petit Verdot, or 3 or 4% Malbec, or 2% Cabernet Franc. And I don't think that's just a chuck it in and see what happens. It's obviously there to play its role, and those great wines of Bordeaux are meant to sell for decades. So I think there's a lot to be said about this wine, where the Cabernet Franc and the Cabernet Sauvignon in their smaller portions will play a bigger role later in life.
Okay.
Because Merlot isn't a highly tannic grape. So for me, I think that juicy plushness of the Merlot is going to back away, and those two more thicker skin grapes are going to come into their own a little bit more. You're going to really start to see that cigar box thing play its role.
Yeah, okay. See, I mean, I guess that's part of the genius. Is anyone can make a wine. Not anyone, I can't, but like a winemaker worth their salt can make a wine to drink now, and a winemaker worth their salt can make a wine that is a bit shy, that will show itself in 5-10 years. To make a wine that is just as good now as it will be in 10 years, but just be two very different wines, is a very hard thing to do. And takes decades and decades of experience.
I think that's the thing. I think it's really like it pleases me a lot to see someone who can make one of the greatest Australian Cabernets and Pinots ever produced, to be able to produce this and say, look, you can enjoy it now. I want my wines to be drunk now. I want my wines to be consumed early, but if you have the notion to chuck a case away in the cellar, they will go that way as well. That's quite special. Yeah. I think there's like not a huge amount of people in the world that make wine like that.
It's one of the great skills in life, if you're into your like good alcohol, is forgetting about things.
Yeah.
Forgetting about a bottle of whiskey for a few years, and then when you move house, you go, oh shit, I forgot I had that one. Forgetting about a case of wine, I forgot I had that one. And it's one, if you like your booze and you buy a little bit and you buy like more than one of the same thing, one of the great skills in life is to forget about some of them.
I think it was, and that was what kind of opened my eyes a little bit when I saw people buying wine to collect. And I always thought like, oh, how can you walk into a store, buy a case or half a case of wine, and then just put it away? But they're not putting like collectors go, oh, I wonder what's in the cellar.
If you're thinking about it, you're almost certainly going to drink it.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's the problem. I have this very, very strange feeling that we're about to go offline again, but I see some blue lights up there.
Yeah.
So
still going.
We might do some final thoughts potentially.
Yeah, I think
before it all goes to rubbish.
I love the whiskey. Yeah.
I as I said, I was super nervous, knowing Crafty quite well, and considering the person a friend. I've got to be honest with these things. The most Moorish by a mile. Like that is dangerously drinkable at 60%. At no point did it feel like 60%.
No.
Potentially, like when you first open the bottle, and as we said, it was almost had the Lefroy effect. When you open a bottle of Lefroy, the whole bar knows about it, or the whole living room knows about it.
Yeah.
Everyone, when you sat down, he was like, "Oh, there's something open there."
Yeah.
But as soon as that blew off after 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 180 seconds, it was just so beautiful, so voluptuous, and going back had so many great savoury notes after the olfactory blends kicked in.
Yeah, the development was super interesting. I think.
Yeah.
Just in the glass, really changed a lot.
Yeah, unfortunately, we drank it all, so I can't tell you what it's going to taste like tomorrow from our sample. But I actually think these are really, really well matched in drinks in terms of if you think about your next, house party or, Boxing Day, watching the test, you don't know what you're going to have for dinner afterwards. Well, no, probably not Boxing Day test, the Australia-New Zealand test, which for Sydney time, I think kicks off about 4 p.m. So,
on Thursday.
So you're sitting down, by the time it's, lunch or tea, whatever they're going to call it, dinner breaks, it's about time to open some whiskey and some wine. It's not, middle of the day.
Get your steak out.
Yeah. Bit of steak for dinner. Picardy and a bit of crafty rage might be the way to go. Whereas,
these are going to be a few of my Christmas presents that I dish out this year, I think. Can't get it wrong. Drink it now, drink it in 10 years.
Yeah. Drink it now.
Yeah, drink it now. Drink it now and come buy some more.
Yeah. Try and do your best to forget about it. If you can't, just drink it now.
Yeah. But I think you will have to dedicate another episode to the Pinot and the Chardonnay. Because that is, in my opinion, some of the best that's coming out of Australia.
Yeah. Well, next year, when obviously this is the 10th episode of this. If you count how many times we went down and had to restart, it's about a 500th episode of this tonight. But 10th episode, 10th night we've run one of these. Probably do one or two more at the end of this year before it gets a little bit crazy. But next year we will have episodes planned. I think we'll a week in advance is what's going to happen. So it'd be great the next time they're over to have
absolutely.
them on the stream. That's a job that you can sort of go out and try and do. And Craig down in Pakenham in Victoria says, and beer.
Yeah, we are working on a beer.
We're working on a beer. They don't sell
hard.
hard ice up in Sydney, Craig. I don't think hard ice is a very Melbourne thing, but we'll find some beer. Definitely, whether we get to it this year, but we want to get some brewers. I actually saw some videos that were sent up by Ashley from 2 Metre Tall in Tasmania. Some of the best video content I've seen in a long, long time. I'm just going to say the two words pumpkin farmers and leave that with you guys. It's coming soon.
I have not seen these videos. I'm very excited.
Two pumpkin farmers being interviewed by Ashley.
Amazing.
Coming to a YouTube channel near you soon about his beer. It's going to be very, very good. We are very sorry about the troubles we had tonight. It was going to go very, very smoothly like every other night has gone, but it looks like we're reasonably stable now. If we could have done this for the whole hour, we would have. So we do apologise that the numbers have been really, really steady the whole night.
We do appreciate the support.
Thank you for all the drama we put you through and tuning out and tuning back in and that sort of thing. But yeah, I guess, if you're not in Sydney at the moment or not in somewhere in New South Wales, you've probably seen the photos, haven't seen the smoke, but everything we do here comes from the ground. Everything we do here is farmed before it sits in a distillery or a brewery or a winery, or before it sits in a bottle and sits on a shelf. So those guys are doing it pretty tough without half the world being on fire at the moment. And no better sort of example than that than fires out of control 10 kilometres from Kapiti, essentially from where Crafty is smack bang in the middle. So there was rumours of some rain up north a bit that were going to hopefully help a few of those fires. So we're still doing the rain dances, and if you happen to be out in those worlds, we really hope you're not doing it too tough, and we'll hopefully get out there soon once everything comes down and pump some money into the local economies to get everyone back on their feet.
That's worth it.
Final words?
Yeah, well, I think exactly that. We
can't do this without you.
Can't do that without you.
Yeah, and there was one thing that through all the issues tonight, there was one thing I think that kept us going, is that yes, we will sit here and keep drinking for as long as it takes to get a live stream up and working. So
it's gonna get finished.
Yeah, look, to be honest, for the last half an hour, I haven't seen any numbers on anything, but they were strong. There might be no one left. Doesn't matter. Thank you very much. We will be back next week on a date to be advised with a very clean, high definition, stable stream.
We'll figure it out. We have 6 days to figure it out.
And Cassie, who I know you were on earlier, I'm so sorry we've ruined this marketing social media plan that you had, but
it was all a stunt.
Yeah, we'll get there. Yeah. We'll get there. Right, so I don't even know how to turn this off at the moment.
Yeah.
I'm so lost on this.
We start unplugging things.
Yeah, just
End.
thank you guys.